You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. Throughout the history of American law, one foundational principle has consistently defined the fairness and integrity of our justice system. It's a principle so essential that without it the very idea of justice becomes hollow and meaningless. That principle is the presumption of innocence. In any court of law within the United States, every person charged with a crime is to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. This presumption stands at the heart of due process, serving not as a formality, but as a safeguard against oppression, wrongful conviction and the misuse of state power. In the case against Robert Sylvester Kelly, however, we've witnessed one of the most troubling deviations from this critical legal standard in modern American history. For perhaps the first time, a defendant was effectively treated as guilty before even stepping foot in a courtroom. This reversal of the standard process threatens not just the rights of one individual, but the very credibility and legitimacy of the American justice system itself.
The most important fundamental principle in law, and that's the presumption of innocence.
To understand why this matters so deeply, it's important to carefully unpack what the presumption of innocence actually means, why it exists and how its violation undermines the core values of fairness, equality and civil liberty that the United States claims to uphold. At its simplest, the presumption of innocence means that no person can be considered or treated as guilty of a crime, unless and until the government has proven their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. This is not an optional guideline. It is a binding legal rule, recognized in both constitutional principles and centuries of legal tradition. It's meant to ensure that no innocent person suffers punishment for a crime they did not commit, and that every defendant receives a fair and impartial hearing. In practical terms, it places the burden of proof on the prosecution. It requires the government with all its vast resources and investigative power to substantiate its accusations through clear, credible and admissible evidence. It is not the duty of the defendant to prove their innocence. Rather, it is the state's duty to prove his guilt. Or as the legal maxim goes, guilt must be proved and not innocence. This principle is not merely a procedural technicality. It's a human right. It protects all people regardless of their background, wealth, social status, religion, gender, race or even personal interests. It ensures that justice is blind, impartial and based solely on verified facts and sound evidence rather than rumor, assumption or call it prejudice. The presumption of innocence falls under the broader rule of fairness, a foundational aspect of due process guaranteed by the Constitution. Fairness demands that every individual be treated equally under the law. No person or group should benefit from special rules or face unique disadvantages in a court of law because of who they are, how popular or unpopular they may be, or how others feel about them personally. The Department of Justice, as the central institution responsible for administering federal justice, has a solemn obligation to uphold these principles in every case. Its prosecutors are not advocates for one side of a dispute. They are officers of the court charged with seeking justice and not merely securing convictions. This means ensuring that every defendant, no matter how controversial or disliked, receives the same procedural protections and fair treatment as anyone else. In R. Kelly's case, this principle was not only violated but was turned completely upside down. From the earliest stages of legal proceedings, the basic assumption appeared to be that he was guilty. The burden of proof, in effect, shifted from the prosecution to the defense. This meant that instead of the government being required to conclusively prove its allegations with solid evidence, it was implicitly expected that the defense should prove R. Kelly's innocence or explain away every claim made against him. Such a reversal is not just a deviation from best practices. It's a profound injustice that strikes at the heart of due process. Without the presumption of innocence, a trial ceases to be a fair and impartial examination of facts and becomes a mere formality, where outcomes are determined before evidence is even presented. It's worth repeating this fundamental truth: guilt must be proved and not innocence. No matter how convinced a prosecutor, investigator or member of the public might be about a person's guilt, their personal beliefs are irrelevant in a courtroom. What matters is what can be proven through evidence and credible testimony under the strict rules of legal procedure. This is precisely why the burden of proof exists. It acts as a check against the dangers of bias, speculation and the misuse of state power. It ensures that no one is condemned based on assumption, public pressure or personal belief. The prosecution may firmly believe in a defendant's guilt, but unless that belief is backed by verifiable lawful evidence and withstands the scrutiny of defense counsel and the impartiality of a judge and jury, it remains merely an allegation and not a fact. In any just system, a defendant who faces unproven charges is entitled to be found not guilty. This isn't an act of leniency. It's a recognition that without proof, no person can or should be deprived of their freedom, reputation or rights. The injustice in this case, however, becomes even more alarming when viewed through the lens of equal protection. Civil liberties are not privileges to be selectively granted based on a person's popularity, public image or the opinions of others. They are constitutional rights meant to protect every individual equally, especially when accused of a crime. When courts or prosecutors allow personal feelings, societal attitudes or outside influences to override these rights, the system becomes inherently unequal. It signals that some people receive fair treatment while others are denied it based on arbitrary subjective criteria. In R. Kelly's case, the principle of presumption of innocence wasn't just ignored. It was thrown out the window before a single court hearing could even take place. The moment Sony, which was his longtime record label, chose to cut ties with him without a single conviction, without a trial, and without evidence having been tested in court, it sent a dangerous message that accusation alone was now enough to destroy a person's career and reputation. But it didn't stop there. We witnessed a presumption of guilt from public officials themselves. Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, instead of waiting for alleged victims to come forward through appropriate legal channels, took to the cameras and made a public announcement calling for R. Kelly accusers to step forward. At that point there were no formal complaints. No accusers had come to her. They manufactured them. It was an open call not for justice but for accusations. A move completely contrary to the ideals of due process and fair investigation. And what truly put the icing on the cake was Judge Ann Donnelly's comment during the federal trial, when she told the jury that matters of abuse among black women are sensitive. In doing so, she signaled to the jury that abuse had already taken place before guilt had been established. That comment was not neutral. It was a presumption of guilt before trial. It implied that the allegations were facts undermining the jury's duty to decide based solely on the evidence presented. These actions together didn't just violate one man's rights. They undermined the foundation of our legal system. Every defendant, no matter who they are, deserves to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. When we start deciding guilt before evidence, before trial and before facts, justice dies in the shadows of assumption. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.